We are going to start reading a couple of works of satire. And so I wanted to give you some background on satire and the different types of it. You may want to write down some definitions as you watch this presentation. First of all, I'll just discuss a little bit about these images that I selected for bell work in case you were not able to be here for the live lesson. In the first picture, you have a book that says literature on it. It's shaped like a coffin, and the little nails that they are tapping in to close the coffin have social media symbols on them. And so the comment here, the social commentary, is that social media has killed literature or reading. And then you have this man eating a cheeseburger while his stomach looks like a cheeseburger. And although some said that the man does not look American, that his stripy shirt and mustache make him look Italian, he, I think, is meant to be an American, an overweight American who just fills his gut with cheeseburgers. So it's a comment on fast food. It's a comment on American obesity. And you are what you eat, so to speak. So, what is satire? What makes satire different than just humor? Satire is humorous, it is meant to be entertaining, and it uses irony and humor to critique society. And that is what makes satire different than just any other kind of humor, is that satire has a purpose. Satire seeks to point out an absurdity in human behavior or to point out something that is wrong with society or societal beliefs, human nature, to try to change it. And so satire is going beyond just making an observation, but it is making an observation in a way so that people realize that that thing needs to change. That's the whole idea behind satire. It is social commentary. And there are two different types. Horatian satire is lighthearted and mildly amusing. So it is meant to make you laugh, and it's just kind of silly. It does have a point behind it, and you kind of see, oh yeah, I see what you did there, but it's just kind of lighthearted. It might do something like treat a very trivial matter as serious, like it might treat something very small, like chewing with your mouth open, like it is the end of the world. Or just the opposite. It might take a very serious matter and like war and make fun of it lightly. And you see this in like fake news anchors on the Daily Show, so to speak. A lot of what they do on Comedy Central is Horatian satire. So it is lightly poking fun at things. Some examples would be The Daily Show, and Saturday Night Live has a lot. Not everything on Saturday Night Live is satire. I want to make sure that you hear me say that sometimes those skit shows are just funny. They're just meant to make you laugh. But especially during an election year, Saturday Night Live includes a lot of social satire, most of which is Horatian and silly. Some of it, though, might tilt toward Juvenalian satire. Juvenalian satire is darker, meaner, angrier. And so, for example, it might shock or upset its readers at first. Your response to Juvenalian satire might be, oh, no, they didn't. Like, oh, gosh, or too soon. Or, your first reaction is, oh, I don't think that they shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have said that. That is just wrong, kind of a thing. But it is meant to be alarming in a way that makes you think. It might, for example, take something tragic like a school shooting to point out flawed beliefs or flawed practices. It might take something like the storming of the Capitol and use that situation to point out some of the errors and ways of thinking that led to such an event. And it might do that by cruelly mocking and calling out the people involved, or by pointing out really shocking and disappointing things in society like sexism and racism in a way that shocks at first but has a point. Some examples of this would be South Park or The Onion. which is an online news venue that is very satirical. These are some terms you might want to write down because as AP students, we go beyond just noticing satire and we want to look at how a writer creates satire. So, some terms that you need to know to talk about satire intellectually is parody, which just means imitating the style of something in a humorous way. Caricature, which is imitating someone by exaggerating their features or actions. We see caricature in art a lot of the time, like you think of caricature drawings of people, but caricature can also be done through acting or it can also be done in writing. Sometimes a writer will include a character that is a caricature of a king or a caricature of an actress, and then their exaggerated actions and speech demonstrate that the writer is making fun of that type of person. A farce is a comedy that relies on absurdity, exaggeration, and often physical humor. And while farce is often just a silly form of entertainment, it can also be used to create satire, especially Horatian satire. A paradox is a statement that appears to be contradictory, but actually has an underlying truth in it. And that is something that you might find in written satire, are a lot of paradoxical statements. And then you have an epigram, which is a short, witty saying that is often satirical or ironic in nature. We will run into a lot of these when we start reading Oscar Wilde. How do writers create satire? Using a lot of those things we just went over, parody and caricature. A mock epic is an imitation of the epic style, and we are going to read a poem today that includes that mock epic style. And irony is another thing that you will find a lot in satirical works, verbal, situational, and even dramatic irony. Hyperbole is definitely used a lot. Absurdity of situation. So sometimes beyond just saying that something is being exaggerated, sometimes what is going on is so completely absurd that it does not make any sense beyond just making you notice how ridiculous something is because it is an exaggerated version of what would really happen. And then humor, humor, humor. Satire makes us laugh in order to make us think. So that might be that the things they say are funny, that the things a character does is funny, or sometimes just the situation they get in. So we do want to look at how a writer creates satire, but another thing we like to ask is why? Because if the point of satire is to make a social message, we have to honor that by then saying, so what exactly is this writer suggesting? What is it? Are they calling out a particular group or institution in society? Are they making fun of a social policy or some kind of human behavior? What is it that they want changed? Sometimes satire will point out the changes that need to take place, but oftentimes satire is just there to point out that something needs to change. They don't necessarily suggest anything new. They don't suggest a different way of doing things. They just point out that the way they're being done is not working. So let's look at some samples of satire. So the kinds of questions that I will ask in class are Horation or Juvenalian? No one's really offended here. It's just Horation. What is being made fun of? Well, they're making fun of these inspirational things people post on social media where they take some kind of image of nature and throw an inspirational quote on there that was obviously from some famous smart person in order to look deeper than they are on social media. This one's a little more difficult. So what is being made fun of here? The economy, current economic crisis. I don't know what the occasion was on which this was published, but any economic recession or crisis. And clearly it's American. Yes, we are united. We're united at the unemployment office. So you can kind of hear the snark in that statement. Horation or Juvenalian? It's a little darker. It's probably it's not the most offensive of Juvenalian satire, but it is a little darker than it is lighthearted. This is a social commentary about teenagers and their cell phone addictions. There's actually a whole video that we could watch where the Onion interviewer is talking to the parents, and they're like, she never leaves her room. She only responds in one syllable grunts to when we ask her if she wants food. Is this really a life? This isn't a life at all. Like reporting that she's clearly brain dead and therefore needs to be euthanized. Horation or Juvenalian? Pretty cutting, pretty dark. I mean, talking about putting a kid down because they're just on their phone all the time, brain dead teen, pretty dark. Oh, that's going to be your bell work. We're going to do those for bell work, so I'm going to save those and not talk about them right now. There are a couple of videos that I am going to post separately, so we're not watching them as part of this, that we can also look into about what kind of satire is being used and what message is being sent. So when we are going to analyze satire, yeah, these are all going to end up as bell works. We are going to practice analyzing satire now by looking at a couple of satirical excerpts in your textbook. So make sure you have your textbook nearby.